In this video, we'll talk about scary things that happened in college that aren't calculus classes, XD. Let's go to the video. It was late one Tuesday night, about 2 weeks before finals. I found myself in the library, which was not unusual. But what was different that night was how late I'd stayed. The library was silent except for the hum of the overhead lights and the distant whir of the air conditioning. By this time, the place was practically deserted, which I loved because it meant I could spread my books and notes out over one of the large wooden tables without getting the stink eye from anyone. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. It was as if someone had walked over my grave. I chalked it up to the AC or exhaustion, but when I looked up, I saw her. Standing between the aisles of books was a young woman, probably around my age. Her long blonde hair cascaded over her pale blue dress, which looked weirdly out of time, like something you'd see in a 60s college yearbook, not on a modern student. She wasn't looking at the books. She was staring directly at me, her eyes unblinking and cold. There was an intensity in her gaze that I couldn't shake off. It felt like she was looking through me. Hey, can I help you?" I tried to keep my voice steady, chalking up her appearance to some sorority dare or late-night student film project. She didn't respond. She just kept staring. Feeling unnerved, I started to pack up my things. "All right, fun's over. If this is a prank, good one, you got me." But still, no reaction. Just then, my buddy Jay came out of the restroom. "Dude, you won't believe the size of the spider he started, but then noticed my pale face. "Whoa, man, you good?" I pointed at the woman. "Do you see her?" Jay squinted, trying to focus. "See who?" "The woman, right there between the bookshelves." My voice trembled. Jay's face went blank. "Bro, there's no one there." My heart raced. I looked again. Sure enough, she was gone. The spot between the shelves was empty. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, and Jay, sensing my panic, didn't argue. We packed up and hurried out of the library, the echo of our footsteps feeling like the only real sound in the world. Outside, the night was cool. The campus lamplights cast a soft glow, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere we'd just escaped. Neither of us spoke of it again that night, but the encounter stayed with me. Lee sat beside me in one of the general classes we had to take. He had jet black hair, always wore simple shirts, and kept his head down when jotting notes. Sometimes during lunch breaks, I'd spot him sitting alone in the corner of the cafeteria, eating from a small container of homemade noodles. One day, we both ended up waiting out a rainstorm in the campus bookstore. Striking up a conversation, he told me he was from China. But as the conversation deepened, he revealed something chilling. "You know," he said, almost in a whisper, "I didn't come here by choice. I was taken from my home and brought to the States." I wasn't sure how to respond. Was he joking? But the somber look on his face made it clear he wasn't. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Lee hesitated. "I just felt the need to tell someone, and for some reason you seemed like you'd listen." We exchanged numbers, and for a few weeks our bond grew. We'd share stories of our lives, with him speaking of a China I'd only read about. He never spoke more about his mysterious arrival to the US, and I never pushed. But then, one day, Lee didn't show up for class. I texted him, but there was no reply. Days turned into weeks. His dorm mate said he hadn't seen him either. No one had. Lee had just vanished. I tried searching for him online, looking for any trace of a student named Lee from China transferring to another college, but found nothing. Years passed, and I graduated and moved on. But the mystery remained. Where had Lee gone? What had happened to him? His story, his sudden friendship, and his even more sudden disappearance became an enigma I carried with me, a haunting puzzle with pieces forever missing. College was, well, college. Same grind, different day. Wake up, go to class, grab a coffee, write some papers, and hang out with friends. Pretty straightforward. I bunked with 2 guys, Tom and Nick. Our dorm was one of the older buildings on campus, and our floor had this weird quirk. Every now and then you'd hear Clair de Lune on a piano. You know, that calm and sort of nostalgic piece. It would play, distant and echoing. Usually late at night when the world felt quiet and still. The first time I mentioned it, Tom looked at me kind of funny. Yeah, I've heard it. Thought it was just someone practicing or something. Nick chimed in. It's too consistent. Every few nights, same tempo, same tone, like a recording. That was true. The precision was uncanny. We talked about tracking it down, but it was college. We had more pressing things to think about, like exams and where the next coffee was coming from. However, it became a topic of conversation when we were hanging out with friends in our room. "Oh, you mean the Midnight Debussy?" A guy named Brian from the building across said. "Thought it was coming from your place." No one knew where it was from. And it wasn't like it was creepy, just odd. The unspoken rule was, if you were up and it started playing, you'd open your window and let it drift in. No words spoken, no acknowledgement, just a momentary lapse in the usual routine. Over the course of the year, I tried a couple of times to find the source. Once, I followed the sound down the hallway, then down the stairs, and out the main door. It led me nowhere. The closer I felt I was, the more distant it seemed. Frustrating? Sure, but like I said, college was busy, and who had time to chase ghost pianos? Then, one night, as I was pulling an all-nighter for a test, the music started. I sighed, opened the window, and tried to concentrate. But this time, there was something slightly different. A pause. A missed note, maybe. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned it to Tom and Nick. Tom shrugged. Maybe they're just practicing a new version. Nick just looked thoughtful. After that, we didn't hear Clair de Lune for weeks. Then months. It was as if the pianist had moved on or maybe just got bored. No one had an explanation. And honestly, few sought one. So, you ever have one of those nights in college where you're cramming for an exam and your roommates are being total dweebs, blasting music or playing video games? Yeah, had one of those. My solution? Head to the library. They had these individual study rooms on the 3rd floor that were mostly soundproof. They were a godsend. It was around 1 a.m. when I got there. The library was in its after-hours phase, so it was quieter, fewer people. There was only one study room available, right at the end of the hall. Now here's where things got weird. I settled in, spreading out my notes, laptop open, earphones in. But every so often I'd hear this tapping. Not rhythmic, just random. At first I thought it was probably someone in the next room or maybe a tree branch outside. But when I took a break and looked out of the window, there wasn't a tree close enough to touch it. It wasn't really scary, just annoying. So I tried to ignore it, but it kept going. Tap, 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 tap. Eventually, curiosity got the best of me. I opened the door, looked left, right. Nothing, no one. But then, across from my room, there was this old wooden door. Not a study room, just a storage or janitor closet maybe. But that tapping, it seemed to be coming from there. Look, I'm not the type to poke around where I shouldn't, but it was 2 a.m. I was tired and I wanted to tell whoever or whatever it was to knock it off. So I approached the door and the tapping stopped. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. For a moment I thought I was losing it. I turned around to head back to my room. Tap, 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 tap. Whipping around, I tried the door handle. Locked. Whatever. I wasn't about to lose sleep over it. I packed up, headed out, and decided to try and catch a few hours of sleep back in my noisy dorm. Next day, during a break between classes, I mentioned it to a librarian. She gave me a puzzled look. That door? It's been locked for years. Used to be an old office or something. But as she said it, I could swear I heard it again in the distance. Tap, 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 tap.